Everyone, thank you all for the meeting. Okay, 25, then we'll be out next year, right? We'll start out with the approval of the meeting minutes, going to mention to the, commissioners you received two, that is in it, there was this, one is from March, they had an adjustment in our last meetings for the March minutes. We approved them at that time, so you don't have to approve them again, but that's why those are in there. And you've all had a chance to look through the minutes of April 23rd. Anyone have any comments or questions?
No.
We have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna start tonight with Christopher Lane. And then the final land development plan, let's see.
Yes, hi. Don't really have much to say. We addressed all your comments and questions. We have discussed all of our waivers. I think the only thing we had to do last time was add some signage and show some evergreen trees out front. Done.
Did
So-
you, just talk through the changes that were made to the, circulation plans?
There, no changes were made to that plan. We added a note that we're going to provide signage, yeah. And Michelle does want some more language on that note, and we'll get that. That's all we need to do.
Okay, so the waivers for this were,
The March 28th letter, there were 3 waivers. Yeah, the first one was curb and sidewalk along all common parking areas. We're asking for the waiver to not provide sidewalks internal to the site or to connect to Christopher Lane. And we're asking for the waiver to not provide curb along the back of the parking lot so that it can sheet drain into the basin. The second waiver requires replacement trees to be provided. We are asking to provide 12 trees, and then those would be those evergreen trees you asked us for last time. And then the remaining 63 will be won't be planted, but we're asking to provide a fee in lieu of those trees. And then the last waiver was added because your ordinance does not allow evergreen trees to be counted towards replacement. So we're asking for the waiver to allow those 12 trees, those 12 replacement trees to be evergreen instead of shade trees.
thank you.
Sure.
Is there any, I'm gonna ask now if there's any public comment on this particular development? Thank you. Does anyone have any, outstanding issues or comments? Michelle? No. Okay, so I would be happy to accept the motion for approval, the recommended approval of the amended final land development plan for this one.
Good motion.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 48 Boswell Pike. AKA Christine Farm, AKA 81 Park.
Hi. Good evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Pianzio. It's nice to see you again on this application. This is our 5th time in front of you for this property, 2nd time for a discussion on preliminary final. I'm here with my team. I have from Orleans, Larry Dugan is here, along with Bill Briegel, sitting in the 2nd row. Jeff Todd from Traffic Planning and Design is with me as well. And Chirag Takar is standing in as our civil engineer. When we were here last time in September, we were here 3 times in 2024, The last of which was September, where we went through the design issues. We got some comments from the planning commission, like adding the fence on the basin, adding trees where we could, because we had replacement trees to add. And the bottom line was go see PennDOT. That's what we were told. Don't come back, go see PennDOT, because what we do along the frontage affects our property. So we did have that meeting with PennDOT. Jeff was there from traffic, or someone from your office, Eric Ostomchuk was there from Traffic Planning and Design, met with the PennDOT people and came up with a design for improvements along our frontage, and that which aligns with Meeting House Road. So the PennDOT application has been submitted, the HOP application. We have revised our preliminary final plans. We have waivers that are the same. We lost one on the size of the pipe. Instead of 18 to 15, they're all 18 now, so we don't have that waiver. And we have 2 additional waivers from what we've already discussed with you. It would make sense, since most people are interested in the road improvements along our frontage, that we put that plan up and go through what exactly that entails. Yeah, I see you nodding. We thought so too. Okay, yeah, that's the hot ticket. So I'm gonna ask Jeff to come up. You mind?
No, no, no.
And let him earn his money tonight. In the meantime, I'll hand out the waiver letter that's been revised to reflect those 2 changes.
So what you're seeing on the screen is the highway occupancy permit plans that were submitted to PennDOT about 3 weeks ago, due for the review letters due at the end of next week. Showing the site plan there with the roadway improvements. I know it's a little hard to see them there, but primarily what you're seeing is the access directly opposite Meeting House Road on Harleysville Pike. A emergency access immediately to the north, at the northern end of the property limits. And within the roadway cartway, we're improving the roadway by installing a center left turn lane between Cheswick Drive and Meeting House Road, as well as a dedicated left turn lane for the site access. But the additional improvements are ADA ramps and crosswalk at the new site drive, as well as a 6-foot wide shoulder along the site frontage. This has all been coordinated, as Kristen said, with PennDOT by means of conceptual plan submissions and collaboration on that. PennDOT had indicated that they are accepting all those improvements that I just listed for you in order for us to move forward with that HOP application. And like I said, this plan is in there under the review right now, and we expect that review to come next week.
So we don't have enough yet from that.
Correct, they're due Friday.
But we do have a response from PennDOT's consultant saying the department has reviewed the proposed concept and core boring findings provided and concurs with the proposed use of the existing cartway. The department has also coordinated with the township regarding the potential signal along Route 113. And this signal is still in pre-planning phases, therefore it should not be included in any plan improvements for this application. Then it goes on about milling, paving, and overlaying. They want us to get rid of the existing striping and any bumps in the road or borings, as you would say. PennDOT also did say that our traffic study does not warrant the center turn lanes. They said the existing traffic doesn't warrant them, and what we are adding with our 26 townhouses does not warrant these center turn lanes. But there was some pressure put on the department, and they are requiring us to do them. So we are, doing what we can to deal with this existing situation and make lives better for the residents of Lower Southwood. But it's extensive. The striping goes well beyond our property frontage. We have to move a very expensive utility pole. And maybe another having to do with that sidewalk extension that is offline along to Cheswick. We don't know. We don't have the review back for that, but my client's willing to do it. We do have some other issues to discuss, but wanted to start with this.
We, sounds like you're making progress with all the issues that I have, and it sounds like it's very well, but we have to have the review that.
Why is that?
Because we can't take your word on what they said.
I have the email which was forwarded to the township consultants.
No, that's not review that.
Well, I don't know what the review, whether it would do that would be so extraordinarily different than what's in this concept plan. From a planning perspective, whatever's required from PennDOT along the frontage is going to be required. The interior is going to stay the same, and all the issues that have to do with the waivers have nothing to do with that, except for the shoulder along our frontage. So it's proposed to be 6 foot. The standard is 8 feet. If Stephanie had her way, it would be 8, but we've compromised on 6 because that's what the county shows for its bike lane and the other bike lanes in the township. So the worst case scenario is that 6 foot shoulder becomes an 8 foot shoulder, and that wouldn't change the design of our plan at all. Wouldn't change any of the planning issues.
It wouldn't change any of the design, any of the widening, widening. of
2 feet
course.
of widening, of
2
course.
feet
yeah.
of widening. Could you, go further to the right, Mike, so we can everybody can take a look at the grading? And Stephanie, you could jump in if you could hear me at any time. That is does that proposed grading match what is shown on the land development plans?
What's on the HOP is also in the land development.
Okay, I thought the grading was more severe on the land development. Rock, I don't know if you know that.
I think the grading, visually looks the same as on the land development plan. The 2 foot widening is gonna have an insignificant impact in terms of adjusting the shoulder, but it's not gonna materially change the stormwater design. We'll have to incorporate that into our plans, but that's about it.
I do believe there are some discrepancies between the HOP plans and the land development plans with regard to the improvements and how they're shown along 113, and as well as some of the grading issues as well. But I think that's probably a result of the land development plans coming in a handful of weeks before the HOP plans were finalized. So that is a comment, I believe in our letter, that those do need to be consistent.
And we would do that, of course.
So the plan for the, bike lane, right?
The shoulder.
The middle shoulder,
Mhm.
like the bike shoulder, it's a Montgomery County plan. I know that, I do a lot of trail and bike plan work, and I understand 6 feet is no longer the standard, it's 8 feet, and we did ask for that 8 feet wide. Stephanie, did you have that conversation about the 8 foot wide, shoulder for the bikes?
We had requested the 8 foot wide shoulder. The new AASHTO guidelines, there are some different standards that are now out with the bicycle guidelines. And it depends on the classification of the road. I do think a 6 foot shoulder, certainly there's going to be plenty of locations where a 6 foot shoulder is a share the road condition, for bike lanes. If that's, whether that's appropriate here, that's the question. As Kristen mentioned, I would prefer the 8 feet because of the fact that it's a principal arterial. But again, we don't have the PennDOT review, which will most likely at least confirm or, discuss the geometric improvements for this.
Thank you. Did you go through the ratings?
Absolutely, yes.
Before we jump ahead, I just want to make sure everybody's clear. So you're saying that if you had to widen the shoulder 2 feet, of course you have 2 feet of widening. The grading necessarily would not change, the sidewalk location as shown on that plan would not change? Would not have to change, is that what you're saying?
We'd likely shift things
Yeah.
back. to
Okay,
2 feet.
so that would have to shift back, but there'd be no change in the width of the sidewalk, length of the sidewalk.
No,
It was just the location.
correct.
Grading would change a little bit, and I think I heard you say that the stormwater management or stormwater collection system would have to be modified, is that correct?
Well, because the curb line's gonna shift, so the inlets would shift, so it's a ripple effect of that, but materially it won't change. It'll still flow where it's gonna flow, it still collect the same stormwater.
Right.
It will be a hair different than what it is today.
So am I hearing that you're just not gonna do 2 feet of widening?
Well, there's-
2 feet of widening?
Well, there's another pole that we have to deal
Okay,
with, and the
okay.
pole that we are moving is 60 to, and there's a lot on that pole, and then if we did another 2 feet, we'd have to move another utility pole, so this has become very expensive for an improvement that's not even warranted by our study. So we're trying to avoid moving that pole, and if a 6-foot shoulder works on this little bit of our frontage, we'd like to do that. But obviously, we have to duke that out with PennDOT.
May I ask a question about the curb returns? The curb returns, I believe, are set at 6-foot shoulders. Is the pole impacted if those were set back to 8 feet? Just at the access?
I mean, I'm looking at the pole, it's right there on the edge.
Yeah,
It's
so-
that,
So that one's being moved already. There's a pole to immediately to the north, to the right, screen right. That is already being moved with the 6-foot. There's an additional pole further north to the right that would be likely impacted.
okay, so that's the pole in question if you were to shift another
Correct.
2 feet. So can the returns at least be set back to the 8-foot width? Because that would make them more consistent with the curb line that's at Cheswick. And it would, it doesn't jut in the curb line for the northbound traffic. It's a question, I just wanted to ask it at this point, and I wanted to clarify if the pole was in the vicinity of the
Are you
the
the
return.
returns for the driveway radii?
Yes. Right, so if you look from Cheswick to the site drive, you can see Cheswick's curb line is set back, and then it starts to taper in a few feet, and your curb lines are a little bit closer. It's not a solid curb line there by any means. It is a little bit of a variable width shoulder that is proposed. So could your curb line be set back to 8 feet at that spot?
I don't see any concern with that. That's a standard.
I didn't even understand her question, so.
So basically, the way the drive, if everyone can see the way the driveway comes up with the throat of the driveway, and then there's radial curb lines that come out to meet the roadway. They're set back at those points 6 feet off of the travel lane.
So obviously, they would have to come in if you're gonna widen along the front.
She would ask that they just be moved 2 feet down on either side. They'd have a small taper going back into 6 feet. So it'd be 8 feet at that point to allow for a future improvement and not have to rip up the
Oh,
driveway
and
and
then-
start over. That's all, that's PennDOT.
That
typically
sounds
will-
minor, okay.
Yeah. That should not be.
All right, I think I follow you, Stephanie. That seems
Okay.
doable.
I have one question.
Yes.
For clarity. Traveling south on 113, there's gonna be a left turn lane into the neighborhood. Traveling north on 113 to be a left turn lane on the meeting house.
Correct.
Correct.
And nothing, you're not touching the Cheswick intersection or anything.
There'll actually be a shared left turn lane for Cheswick as well.
Okay. Will be
It's
left
center
turn, southbound,
Correct.
113 will be left turning into Cheswick.
Correct.
Okay.
So that whole section's being expanded basically to 3 lanes. And I'm sorry if I'm breaking protocol.
That's
I don't know what the protocol is
Okay.
relative to asking questions and stuff.
But, you know, after this, we're-
All right, so I should make a list of all my questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Want to do the waivers? Please. Okay. So. There's. Yes, 3 on the first page are the same as our last discussion. First has to do with preliminary and final at the same time. Second has to do with the intersection spacing. That's the distance of our proposed road in Cheswick. The third has to do with the clear sight triangle. I understand there's a code change on, a foot, right, to make that change, but we're okay with the 75-foot triangle there. Turning to the second page. 4, 5, everything on this page, we'll stop at 7. Let's say 4, 5, and 6, they're all the same. The grading slopes have to do with the stormwater basin. That's to maximize the capacity of the basin. The second one has to do with the shared path location. We have a 25-foot easement, and we've located the path so that it respects the boundary of our neighbors and stays out of those significant environmental features. So it's located along the edge. Replacement trees. This has been amended. We have a greater number of replacement trees than you saw the last time we were here. So the waiver request is that we plant 80 trees out of that 666. We do have 196 other trees, but they're in the category of street trees, stormwater management plantings, buffer trees, and site element screening. They don't count towards the replacement trees, so there's a waiver request for that. Along Harleysville Pike, we had conversation a couple times ago. We were trying to save the existing vegetation along the frontage because there's significant pines there, but with the widening that we're doing, those trees are gonna come down. So we're asking for a partial waiver here. There's a requirement for a berm because the backs of the residential houses face Harleysville Pike. There's already a drainage swale there that we don't want to berm. So we're asking for a partial waiver to not add that berm, which would, so we can maintain the existing drainage pattern that is along the frontage. And the other waiver is partial. The requirement is for ornamental plantings in that area. We want to mix in some evergreens so we get a thicker amount of planting along that frontage and sort of liken it to the evergreens that are there. Number 8, existing features. This is a common waiver. We are, what did we do? 50 feet from track boundaries. And I think an aerial to go with that. 9 was discussed before. We have private streets, so we requested a waiver from the 50-foot wide right of way to a 30-foot. The new one is number 10. This is for that shoulder, that it be 6 feet instead of 8 feet. Obviously, PennDOT dependent. 11 is the same. That's the distance from the intersection. That's the houses within our 2 cul-de-sacs. The idea is you don't want people stacking up at a stop sign and blocking people's driveways, but we only have a few houses. That'll be low volume. So that's the waiver we've discussed before. 12 has to do with using Belgian block instead of concrete. That's common. It looks nicer. It's easier to repair and replace. 13 has to do with the slope of the basin. That's a requesting a waiver from the requirement to provide a flat bottom infiltration basin. The waiver is necessary to comply with DEP stormwater management guidelines. 14 is new. Around our basin, we have double plantings required. So we have buffer plantings and then element screen plantings, both to be located in the same spot. We can't plant on top of each other, so that's a waiver from the screen planting requirements. That's it.
And is there, we're the next one,
I'm sorry.
is it that same?
Yes, we added, that was a request. We added that post and rail with the mesh at the bottom.
It's,
Should be. Mike has it too. Do you want to put it on the screen?
Yep. Will it be illustrative or is it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's all the trees in there. We have 2. We have the illustrative plan that has the landscaping on it, and then we have the black and white landscape plan. So we'll start with the one, and if you want to see the other one, we have it. Yes.
This one is not, but they, the black and white version that shows all the trees.
Okay, don't worry about it. No, I have it. Yeah, this is good.
LP1, LP2 are some of the.
This was a separate, this
Okay,
was,
separate page, okay.
yeah.
I can pull it up.
The computer likes to buy it too much.
It is, okay, don't worry.
And if you need to use it quickly. It's up on the big screen too, if that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You want me to specific?
No, I'm okay. I just want to find before, thank you. And of course, I know there's gonna be a lot of questions about too, especially since you mentioned ripping out the pine trees along 113. And I wanna make sure other folks saw that the color one actually shows you might do a little better, the buffering along 113 that's going to be restored
Right,
after you rip out the other pines.
right.
And then I think if we go to the left, but I think there's a berm near the backyards
Yeah, yep.
of the Cheswick neighborhood. You can see there that the planted trees, that is a berm, correct? A raised berm, so.
I don't think they have the berms in.
Is that? Okay. Just want to make sure that's clear for everybody. And that's a mix of evergreens in the city, which is.
Yes, that should carry along both property
Yeah.
both property lines.
Okay.
Yeah, there was conversation about the fence. There's a hodgepodge. We walked it. I didn't walk it. My clients walked it. It's different as you go. Some is split rail, some is like box with mesh, some is down, some is up. We tried to discover it through plans, old plans, how that fence came to be. We can't nail who owns the fence. It is right on the property line. So we don't have intentions to touch the fence. We're just gonna landscape all the way in that area, yeah. Remember that one of our earlier designs, we had the backs of these units facing the neighboring properties, and that was a no-go. So we've turned the houses so that none of the backyards on this plan face any of the adjacent neighbors. Instead, they get the landscape.
Stephanie, do you have something else?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to suggest, Mike possibly to bring up the HOP plan that shows the pavement markings. It will be a little, I think, a little cleaner, a little easier for people to see what's being proposed. The previous plan was the land development plan, so it was missing, I'll say, some of the line striping. So Mike, if you maybe zoom in at the intersection, going from left to right from this sheet to the next sheet, you can see where they have their center left turn lane, you have the 4-inch white edge line on both the site side and then the far side. The existing dash line is the existing edge of pavement today. In both cases. So moving to the right, you'll see the left turn lane, the designated left turn lane that goes into the proposed site drive. Their proposed curb returns and shoulders, and then the 4-inch white line on the opposite side that is approaching the meeting house intersection. So this was the subsequent HOP set that came to the township for review, and we reviewed it in conjunction with the land development plans. And so our letter addresses comments for both of the plan sets. And this is the plan that's currently into PennDOT for review. I just felt like it was a little cleaner version of what the proposed roadway condition is going, would look like out there along this section of 113.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. Anyone else need these? Bring those people to comment, if that's all right. Okay, we're gonna open up the floor about the public comment, please direct the comments to the board and not to the consultants. I also please not to share your name and your address, please speak. Who wants to go first?
Alan Duddy, 483 Cheswick Drive. Couple of things real quick. Situation with the fence that it just came up, I thought that was already resolved in previous meetings that we were in fact going to have fencing replaced. The fencing did belong to the Durstein property because he had horses on the property. So it was with that particular property. So I think we still need to revisit fencing. Especially with the fact that you said some of the fencing is falling down, it hasn't been maintained since the new owners have been in there. We've been maintaining it, property owners. So that was one thing. I don't know where to begin with this 113 left turn lanes. It just looks like a cluster. It's the only way I can describe that. You're having cars heading north, cars heading south, both going into left turn lanes, some trying to get into the new drive, some trying to get into Cheswick, some trying to turn on Meeting House. You're gonna be playing chicken in that center turn lane. Because people, if you go there right now, it's a mess trying to make left turns into Cheswick and into Meeting House. You're gonna add now a center turn lane. You're gonna divert the traffic to the right and to the left. Where do the trucks come? The semi-tractor trailer trucks, the increased traffic of that, they cannot get around now. And they're gonna be even worse with the center lane now. You're only adding 2 feet. It's tractor trailers will not get around that area once that's put in there. It's just not feasible. If you have a car in the center lane trying to make a turn, another car trying to get around it, tractor trailer can't do. Just to clarify, you said that currently there's 666 trees on the property, and you're gonna reduce that to 80. And then 196 smaller shrubs, is that, if that's correct? Just wanted to clarify that, so we're going from 666 to 80. On the property, seems like drastic. And then my last thing is, and I don't know, Mike could pull it up, but it's in the northwest corner of the property. There's a snow storage space they want to put in, where they would deposit snow from this development, which eliminates putting trees in that back corner. Yeah, it's right at the end of that cul-de-sac on the left side. There's a snow storage area that, and because if you zoom in and you compare it to the foliage, they've eliminated trees in that corner because of the snow storage area. I don't think that's necessary yet, that a snow storage area, and then take out the large trees. If you go through the diagrams, most of these are just small trees. They're not big trees. I had a lot of other stuff, but I'll leave it, I'll let some other people speak. Thank you.
So maybe to tag on to what he just said, so, yep, Robert Menges, Menges, 509 Oakland Avenue, so down Meeting House Road. Similar concerns relative to the turning lanes and the amount of, total frontage that's gonna be there. Like you said, it's a mess now. As a cyclist, often feeling as if I'm heading towards Meeting House coming from Cheswick, from our wonderful bike path that we have here in the township, I'm taking my life in my own hands. And if you're now adding turning lanes into that, and you're gonna have trucks that are gonna need to navigate, and I wasn't sure if I understood that we're adding 6 feet of bike lane, if you will, on the side, or reducing it, but I think you really need to take a hard look at that entire intersection coming from Cheswick all the way down, and so many, I don't know, hundreds of feet past Meeting House, to make sure that you've got enough thoroughfare and an emergency side, road, if you will, that people need to get off on their shoulder that they can. We want this to be a friendly for the township and the existing community. We welcome more people coming in the community, but we need to make it safe at the same point in time. And from what I'm just seeing, and I'm not an engineer, it sounds like it's going to be a congested cluster of an issue. So I just ask for, and I'll trust our board, that you've got the right people on this, but it doesn't sound sufficient to me. If I then go on to some other things, so down all of Meeting House, and this may be more of an issue for our board members. You're probably aware that many of us have lost our well water supply over the years. I understand that shifts in the limestone, et cetera, can cause that. My concern is that when this development goes in, what does it do to the surrounding area bedrock, and possibly shifting of the water supply that goes through all of the people down Meeting House, down Oakland and Woodland Avenue, right? And I know that your company can't be held liable for that, but have sufficient studies been done to really ensure that 6 months from now, 6 years from now, I don't lose my water, right? I'm assuming that this is going to be water supplied through the Lower Southford Township Authority, or no? North Penn Water, but it's going to be quote unquote city water coming in, to which we don't have access to right now, right? So, if there's any way that as you're putting in all this infrastructure, there's a way to at least put a head of water supply that could come down to Meeting House at some point in time, that would be wonderful, but that's between you and the company. You know, the improvement. I'll hold other comments in case there's others that have things, but I do have a couple other questions or comments.
I have a question. Please. 446 Windsor Drive, Cheswick, last name is Schwung. Going back to the 113, that intersection, I understand that PennDOT does a traffic study. But the traffic study doesn't account for times of the day,
It does.
does it?
It does.
Because,
I think our city is who needs a traffic study, and when those traffic studies are done, they do account for different.
so they're accounting, they're clearly not coming here and sitting, trying to get out of Cheswick during rush hour and turning left. Clearly not. Because you can't. I mean, you can, eventually you can. But with those turning lanes, you're gonna have people in the turning lanes. People trying to get out of Cheswick, people trying to get out of Meeting House. And in my opinion, it's just not the solution. It's not. It's a nightmare already. And people, tractor trailers literally fly by you on the right when you're turning left into Cheswick. Literally fly by on the shoulder. So if you're sitting in the left turning lane, the poor person trying to get around, I mean, it's just, I just don't see this as a solution. I think it's awful. But that's, it just seems like it's like, let's figure something out and throw it in there. And then if it doesn't work in 10 years, well, too bad. You know? It's ridiculous.
Lori Yamashita, I have a number of comments, but I just want to piggyback on the traffic study.
Which
comment.
address, Lori?
470 Wexford Circle. Thank you. And my comment is, when I looked at the information submitted to PennDOT, I saw that one of the traffic analysis was done based on a 2022 TIS and factors used to increase, I guess, to project current and future traffic based again on 2022. Now, that was still in the COVID days, and a lot of people were working at home. I'm familiar with say for Merck people, the ones that could stay home. In 2023, they may have come back with maybe 3 days a week, and a lot of them are 5 days. But I look at the 22 data, 2022 data, and also say, well, what happened in terms of development? Think of all the houses by the post office. You know, think about what's approved down 113. So I'm just questioning the basis for the TIS study that's been used to justify or used for design. Echo the comments about flying through. People routinely go down the shoulder and they barely get back in lane before they hit a mailbox. With respect to just something that maybe Stephanie can address. In her comments, there was a statement, there's a lot of discrepancies between the HOP permit and the land development plan. I think that alone should say we can't approve, make a preliminary and a final approval on land development. Now, I have a lot more comments. I want to leave it up for the others, but I have some specific things to bring up later.
Sure.
My name is Joe Lee, 471 Wexford Circle. I have a question about the landscaping on the, I guess what would be the southern edge of the property down below. There are stands, there are 2 stands of very large, fully developed pine trees. And they're indicated as BF. What does BF mean? Buffer planting. Does that mean?
Buffer planting
Does that mean that stays or does that go?
states.
Second question is that fence line across that back is all horse pasture, and it wasn't ours. And it's in desperate need of repair.
This
Are you
is
gonna
reference to the board.
Beg pardon?
This is reference to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are they gonna repair that fence line, because there are sections of it that are missing? I don't mind the animals coming through, but if you're putting a walking path in there, I have objections to other people using my backyard to cut through, to cut off a half a mile. So, I'm just wondering if they're gonna do that. And I have all the same objections to what they're doing I won't go that way anymore, I just go out the back way, I wouldn't even think of using some, 113. Thank you.
Lori Yamashita, I just want to piggyback on the fence comment. What I see from the CKS engineers letter dated May 21st, page 8, item 12. It does say the replacement or installation of new fence along the property lines should be discussed with the planning commission. And it starts off, we note existing fence in rear yards of the properties on Cheswick Drive and Windsor Drive is shown to remain and will not be replaced. But then that second comment, so I take that as it's still an open item and that the board or the commission is supporting looking at that further.
I have a few questions based on some of the comments, and then maybe go back to some more, if that's all right. I don't know if previous minutes had it. My recollection of the fence was that I think it is an open item. We'd have to look back at the minutes, but I do recall that we had a long discussion about the fence. And it is in disrepair, and I thought that was something that the applicant was gonna look at and potentially take care of, but I don't know if we got that far. But I do think that's still an open item. I also would like your, just like an answer to it, I don't know the answer to it. There was a question brought up about water supply ramifications from, I'm no engineer. I know we talked about some of this stuff in the past, but can you address that? Are there?
It all questions together and.
That's
But did you say supply ramifications? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Just one more comment, Jody, again. Spruce trees right now have, there are two kinds of spruce trees that are affected by a local fungus. Colorado spruce are all the ones that are turning brown in all the other developments. Norwegian spruce also have a canker, which is a fungus which will kill them. If they're gonna put spruces in, it's the pig in a poke. Those things are gonna be dead in a couple of years. Just wanted to point that out.
Hi, Diane Turkoff, 523 Meeting House Road. I guess I'll stand up again. I get the safety issue is a big one for me too, and I am like my friend here is a bike rider, and cyclists do come up there. So what's being proposed, I think, is going to make it really unsafe. However, and the other thing is, the question I have, and maybe it's been answered. If you come out of Meeting House Road and turn left, you go down and you see the driveway to the farmhouse. So my question is, why isn't that the entrance to this development? As opposed to immediately across Meeting House Road? It seems to me like you're creating a whole lot of more issues and problems. Whereas if you had an entrance there, you may not need left-hand turning lanes and everything. That's just my thinking overall. So to me, it's being made more safe. Now, if that's because it's going to impact the number of units are there, good. Because personally, I think there's way too many units on that piece of property. It doesn't jive with how Holliesville land development is, in my opinion. And so I think those are my two concerns. I've got a lot more, but I think those are the two that I think I would like to. Oh, the third one, the other one, the berm, does that mean looking from the 113 onto the development, there's no berm? You're just looking at trees and then houses?
Yes.
Is that what that means?
Yes.
So there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm
And
looking
that
here.
led to a birthday for the attorney.
A berm would be a little bit of a berm so that it's kind of, it's also protection for the houses, but for looking in, you'd see a little bit of a berm like you do in other places. You wouldn't be looking right into the house that we put right there. Is that what I mean? Is that what it is? I may not be explaining myself very clear, but let's say the building is right there where you are, now. And I'm on Meeting House Road. Am I looking right into your house now? There's no berm. There's nothing, right? Is that right?
Which trees?
There's gonna be trees in there. And they're going to be, sorry, look at you. Yeah, but okay. But I think it's still a lack of privacy. I think it's still an issue there too. But my main things were the traffic. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Coon. I'm 519 Meeting House Road, moved in 5 years ago. Love the township, everything. Very, very concerned about blasting that will happen to build these homes. I know down at the end of our street, we have the quarry.
Sorry,
These last
blasting.
now, pardon? She said there was a blasting survey done for the ground. So the rock was shipped around. Now that I'm closer to 113, I'm sure I'm gonna feel my house rock more. I want some type of confident security that I'm not gonna lose my well and my house isn't gonna have cracks. But our houses are older. But I need, confidence that I'm not gonna have to put more money in my house because of these.
Yeah, Lori Yamashita, just a comment, on the blasting. I looked at one of the soil studies that was done for the infiltration basins. It noted that they hit bedrock at 6 inches. So that I think then they went to, and there were several studies or samples that they could not go as deep as they could. So in an area where they had picked for an infiltration basin, they're hitting bedrock that soon. Do these townhouses have basements? And what's the volume excavation for blasting? And how long is that gonna go? Just a general comment, kind of related, where I differ again on the waiver comment. In August, there was a letter from ARNA to the township. It listed 7 waivers. If you look at the plans now, there's 13. And I thought I heard there was 2 more. I can't do that now.
That's not unusual.
Yeah. Know that I thought the representative from the developer said there was just 2 more roads, but there's 13 now.
This goes through the process. It's not, I'm just saying it's not unusual to find more rates that you need as it goes through the process. And they did it.
Oh, sure, as we get more information and more data. With respect to the traffic and turning, the question on the site triangle, I know there's a waiver to go from 300 feet to 75 feet on the new private road. I'm questioning, I believe that there's current shrubbery and landscaping off-site that will not allow that 75-foot site triangle. Basically what they're asking for, I don't think they'll achieve unless off-site property does make some movement and changes. And is that something that the developer could ask a property owner to do for their site triangle, or will that be field checked?
I'd like to piggyback.
We can take flyers, 2 more flyers, because then we're gonna start answering some of these questions, so, who hasn't spoken yet, sir?
I'd just like to piggyback on that comment. Ron Patterson, 191.
Thank you.
All right. I'm impacted on 2 sides. 113 side and the back of the property. And I see quite a few changes to my property for this development. And some of these changes are in my opinion, negative. Firstly, let me agree with everything else that's been said. Traffic is terrible. The noise issue is terrible. And with regard to the noise in my home, the setback requirements, I'm actually gonna be closer to the road. You know, installing that center lane moves my home closer to the road. And what does that do as far as the noise situation is concerned? Well, it increases it quite a bit. So I'm very much concerned. I can sit in my family room right now and hear the trucks rumbling, 4 o'clock in the morning. All right, down 113, and the rest of my neighbors hear that too. You know, they can hear it just as well as I can, but they can hear it. You know how loud it is in mine. With regard to the 75-foot back and the line site, yes, it appears that the township is taking some of that real estate back in my property. All right, some of the shrubbery, things like that. That shrubbery is there to give me some privacy from the traffic, the left turns from Meeting House, the lights coming into my back. So that shrubbery comes in handy. Now I have a fence that's coming down, and I would have replaced it a couple of years ago when I replaced the rest of it. I'd like to put my fence back up where it is. And you told me, you know, that I can't do that? Is that what the board is saying? And I guess these are preliminary drawings. I'd like to be able to respond to the drawings so I can actually, you know, comment on my setbacks and things like
This
that.
is preliminary final. It's combined.
Preliminary final?
Is that correct? It's combined. Yes, yes.
Preliminary final.
That's correct. That's what they call it.
Hmm.
I'm gonna close public comment.
Can I just reiterate someone over here said about
You wanna get back, you're gonna get into the stuff.
the number of properties that we already, probably everyone here knows how much these are gonna go for. The 4 in the back that are facing Windsor Drive with the driveway and the curve that we talked about, meeting after meeting. Those people, the back of the houses on Windsor Drive are gonna get high beams as they're turning into their driveway and their family rooms are gonna be lit up. I still think that's too many. There's 4 at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. The driveways are just gonna, the back of these houses along Windsor are gonna get high views in their family room.
But it's straight into the family.
Straight into their room,
You see, I see it,
all the way around.
right, I see it, the
We
turns.
brought it up before
Okay,
several
can we
times.
have one person at a time talking?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take one more question and we're gonna go into a discussion. Ma'am?
Debbie Helt, 475 Wexford Circle. I'm concerned about the blasting because it would basically be directly across from my backyard when you're putting in that basin at the top. That concerns me for the structure of my house. I don't know what that means. But goodness, that concerns me on the foundation, my basement, my paver patio. Concerning the fence line currently in today's discussion is not going to be touched. But it is, as already has been said, is deteriorating, falling down. It's going to need repair on my side and on my neighbors on both sides. And when it does, I'm gonna have to repair a fence that isn't mine or put up a new fence. And where do I put it? It's currently on the property line. If I don't put it on the property line and I abide by today's zoning, which I'm not even sure what it is, it will be offset from what the fence line is. Then I mess up the fence line on my 2 neighbors, one of which has a dog, and they have their property line where it's got fenced in, so their dog won't run away. And the other is for grandchildren that won't wander off, okay, little grandkids. So I'd like to know if they are not going to touch the fence. What do the current individuals who live there, who back up, where can we put our fence? So that it meshes with our neighbors. So we don't create this hodgepodge. And lastly, one last question. It appears, I think, that the 8-foot walking trail has been moved further back. Am I correct in that assumption? The walking trail that goes, yeah, right there, Mike, where you're pointing. That appears to be further back from the last drawing that we saw in September. I don't know who to direct that question to.
Actually, you can see the Minto property.
All right,
And my question would be, what is that distance from the fence line to the first step on the asphalt or the walking trail? How far is that from the fence line?
we'll measure it for you then.
Julie, can I
Betty,
just
can you
make
please
one
make
more?
the final comments?
I sure can.
Because we need to,
I'd love to.
discuss some of these
I
items.
appreciate it. Thank you.
It's
so
what's your last name?
Betty, 483 Cheswood. It seems like we're doing a lot of reconfiguring and a lot of rearranging everyone's lives, the community with the road, safety, privacy, security, everything is being jeopardized for one development. And it appears that I've never seen any other development in this township go through so much to be able to get a development put in. And I'm not putting any negativity on you. I'm just saying what we had to call for PennDOT, what we had to ask for from the community, what we had to ask for from the planning commission. How many revisions you guys had made is crazy. And I appreciate you accommodating us. Don't get me wrong. However, it's a lot just for one development. The trees are way out of numbers. You have 666 and you're gonna go down to 80, or even 176 was too low. It's only because you don't have space because you're putting 26 units in, which everyone told you, including the planning commission, that's too many units. I understand you moved them around, everything is great. However, you still have them plopped right in the middle of the wetland. Right in the middle of everybody's line of sight that's in the community and the neighborhood that's been there for over 50 years. You don't need them, but I know that's not gonna change, but we need more trees. My berms on my backyard, I am not looking at a 35-foot triplex or biplex, I'll tell you that right now. If you're moving the berms out, which I wasn't aware of until recently, I want at least a 14-foot shade trees all along my back fence line. And I want a 6-foot privacy fence, because that's what I was promised. Manis even came to my house, said, let's decide uniformly on what kind of fence we want. That's what we want. I'm speaking for everyone, because nobody wants to see a 35-foot biplex or triplex where there were horses and deer before. As far as 113, that's not even an issue. I mean, you can't even begin to talk about that. You can't possibly put this type of left turn lanes with the ramifications of, excuse me, that type of traffic that comes around. They're gonna do a truck study on 113 to see how much we have as far as warranted trucks to come through that lot, that area, whether or not it's necessary, whether or not anything can be done. I've already talked to PennDOT, because it is 10 times more than what it was in 2022, if not more. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. And as far as basins are concerned, we're doing slope waivers. We've talked before, they're trying to make it a 3, whatever it is, instead of 4 to whatever one slope. We've already talked about this. It's gonna have too much sediment, too much groundwater settling. It's gonna contaminate the ground. It's impervious land. You can't get in this land because it's all shale and bedrock. You need at least a 4 to 1 on this type. Flat bottom is fine, but you need a 4 to 1, or else we're gonna have standing water, contaminated soil, which is already gonna be contaminated, not to mention the waterways that are gonna be totally screwed. And I also needed to find out some of the tree removals. I know you're not supposed to go on private properties or 5 feet from the private properties to remove. I'm wondering if any of our neighbors are gonna lose any of our trees. Just because it happens to infringe on what you're doing with the development of the walking trails, because I do know they overhang.
Showed on the demo plan, some on the border.
Some on the border, I don't
Outside of
know.
The limit of disturbance.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, and the Cheswick sign, I wanted to make sure our Cheswick sign is not gonna be affected, I don't think it is, but I just wanna make sure, cause you're already infringing on Ron's property. Which I totally think is unnecessary, and you're making it unsafe for the bike riders. And there's no way anybody can pass anybody or go anywhere on that road. With the way this plan is, and that's all, and I appreciate the time, thank you.
Thank you. We're closing the public comment, now we have to stop, because we need to talk about some of these things.
So we don't have any opportunity to provide anything else, we're done.
Let's see how long it takes to get to.
Okay,
the next
gotcha.
step. Okay. Let me start, please, Mike, maybe you help us out with this, people who are concerned about their water supply being affected, or if there's a problem with water supply in the future and you need to hook up to public water. How do you address that? Is that something that's being considered? Is that what you look at?
My understanding, there are no groundwater studies from a water supply perspective that are done for land developments. It's stormwater management. And so for, from a stormwater management perspective, or a sanitary, almost sanitary sewer perspective, that's where the groundwater or the depth of groundwater is determined and the filtration rate of the, from the ground, but not for water supply.
And, continuing with that topic, Kristen, perhaps you could, let us know, there is some concept of blasting.
Yeah, we don't think that there's going to be any blasting. We didn't do the blasting survey yet, but based on the geotech that we performed on the property, we don't think it's necessary. Yeah, we have basements running, yeah.
Okay, I want to separate out the traffic and intersection issues, so the other issues we talked about getting first. And we started talking about transport. You know, so you
Wait, I just wanted to ask you your thoughts, any further thoughts? My recollection was that wasn't open item, and I thought we're leaning towards in previous meetings is that you're gonna take on the fence. I don't think that was ever 100% decided, but my recollection is we're sort of going that way because they are kind of, the residents are kind of between a rock and a hard place, they want everything. And the fence does need repair.
Here's the issue, and we didn't resolve it, and we had a staff meeting since our last preliminary time here in September, trying to figure out where the fence came from. Because it's right on the property line, it's hard to decipher who owns the fence, and it changes. So there's no great indicia. I know people who live there have an opinion, but there's a legal issue with replacing the fence that's right on the property line. I don't know who owns it. We would need easements from every property owner to do it. We're gonna have different opinions about the fence for different properties. Many people use it as their third side for their own fence in their property. How to manage all that seems untenable. So, and we have a lot of extra expense that we weren't contemplating. So when you put all that together, we don't plan on touching the fence. We do plan on landscaping it. Landscaping the entire, the reason why we need the waiver is we have no more room for plants. It's cheaper to plant them than to have to pay a fee for any trees that we can't plant. So we've filled this property where we could, not taking trees down to plant new trees. That's not our MO. The trees along the frontage have to go because the code requires if you're within so many feet and you disturb, they consider those trees gone. So if they're in jeopardy to die, we'd rather put new trees in and have a nice viewscape along 113.
Just, another instance, we talked about, the next line, property line. On both properties, how many has that?
But normally there's a a clear understanding of who owns the fence. And based on survey, you can determine exactly what property the fence is on. And so I think what Kristen is saying is that I think that varies through the development or through the site, that sometimes it's on 488's property, sometimes it's on Cheswick.
Would it be possible for a fence to be installed on the 48 property? Even if it's not using that location, is the old fence, is
They could put up a fence along the boundary.
it sounds like maybe
All 48
different,
properties.
it's right on front. That would involve the easements.
But I was gonna say, here's where you're gonna get a problem though. You move it in a foot, put it on their property. And there's property owners who have 3-sided fences, using that one as a back wall. Then they have to extend their sides all 1 foot or 2 feet, depending.
On our property.
Onto your property,
Exactly.
right? Because
Yeah.
the fence is 1 foot onto their property.
It's not a simple, not a simple issue.
First place in the town where there are fences to meet each other, and there should be a practical, easy way to make this happen.
Well, it probably would be if we're dealing with 2 properties, you know, back to back, but we have significant distance among many different properties.
I was present when they surveyed. Harry Lewis, I was present when they surveyed and they found the pins on my property 1 foot away from the fence. Fence is not on the property line, the fence is 1 foot of their property.
So we have your name and address, please.
Harry Lewis, 443 Windsor.
Thank you.
Okay, could you talk briefly about the 75-foot line of sight and whether or not any of the basic bridges are in that line? That's right. Make them fix it.
That wasn't for Steph.
For the,
Do you want me to answer that? Is that for me?
Sure.
There is a line of sight for the clear sight triangle, 75 feet back, 300 feet in each direction, left and right. And there is an existing tree or 2 that are within that site triangle. It is on the adjacent property. Mr. Patterson and Miss Brown. Mike, if you wanted to bring up the land development plans, sheet 4. To the left, looking to the left, you can see those existing trees and the dashed site triangle line. So those trees are within that site triangle. They are existing and they are on the adjacent property. Likewise, there's a few other trees that are between the road and the sidewalk. I will point out the Cheswick sign is to the left and back, so that is well out of the way of the site triangle. I will also add that the required egressing site distance to the left and to the right is measured in a different way from a clear site triangle. And we do not have any concerns with that. You can see up, it says required site distance, 45 miles an hour equals 383 feet. Available is 1,000 feet. And that is it's the dashed line. So that's measured much closer to the road. And there's no concern with that line of sight. But there is some existing vegetation within the clear site triangle.
And what does that mean to the fate of those trees on that?
Well, we're trying to figure out what kind of tree it is to see if the canopy is up high enough. Yeah, that's what.
That would be the next, that would be the next question. Does it impact, is there a reason, or does it look like it impacts the clear site triangle? And I can't answer that question at this time.
If it does impact the site triangle, then what?
Yeah. The survey doesn't show the type of tree, so I'm not sure. And maybe our waiver gets adjusted to be a 74-foot instead of 75. The trees along the frontage there, they're all within the right of way, the PennDOT right of way. I don't think we planned on removing them. I think that we have to look and see if that canopy is high enough that you can see.
Okay.
Yeah, Kristen, the PennDOT site distance is met without that impact to trees.
PennDOT said distance, and what, is that 75 feet?
10 foot back from the edge of travel lane,
Yeah.
different distances in each direction.
So the township code though is 300 foot and we were asking for 75, but thankfully someone brought that up and maybe we need to adjust that to maybe 73 or 74. I'm not sure what kind of trees they are.
That's.
Stephanie, could you talk a little bit about, a lot of the neighbors here are very concerned about the turns into the communities off the main road there and on Meeting House. Can you talk briefly about how that will work and what the process is for determining this thing?
Sure. So the traffic study was completed, and I know that there was a comment about the traffic volumes and counts being from 2022. There are standard guidance and rules that are followed when it comes to a traffic study. It does get reviewed by both the township and PennDOT. Traffic counts that are within 3 years are generally accepted. There is also accommodations made for background growth traffic, other developments in the area. All of those are scoped within the traffic study and basically analyzed and determined what the existing and future conditions would be, both with the development and without the development. So having said that, the traffic study has been reviewed and approved by PennDOT. We also had no other comments on the traffic study. As far as the movements at the intersection, it does not warrant, as Kristen said, it does not technically warrant a left turn lane based on the additional traffic that is proposed as a result of the development. I do know PennDOT has requested and required the addition of the left turn lane specifically, and they understand it wasn't warranted, but they did feel that it was an improvement that would be made and that could be made to improve safety within the area, giving people a space to be while they're making that left turn movement. I understand the concern with the two-way center left turn lane. It's not very long. I believe it's, what is it, Jeff? 179 feet. If you think about having a back-to-back left turn lane, you really would need 100 feet plus your 75-foot bay taper. So that there's not enough space between the two intersections to provide exclusive left turn lanes. And so PennDOT's position really was to provide the center left turn lane because the volume turning into the new development, the volume turning into Cheswick, and the volumes turning into Meeting House. While the volume on 113 is significant, those turning movements are not that heavy. So they felt that it was adequate to be able to allow those movements to be made. So that being said, I will say that, you know, they did review it and they did approve it and they look very closely at those items. But again, we don't have their review for the general configuration of this yet, and that will be out, should be out by the end of next week. And so we'll learn more from them.
And Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was PennDOT who suggested or required us to put the access across from Meeting House.
Correct.
Somebody said you should utilize the existing driveway. There was an option at one time of utilizing the location of the original driveway. That was not allowed by PennDOT, and PennDOT forced the developer.
So
Yes.
maybe it doesn't come out of this, the PennDOT study is, I've lived here for 25 years. When I make a right-hand turn onto Meeting House Road, I'm slowing down because it's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit to get on there, and there's a big ass ditch on the right-hand side that needs to be repaired. It's a different subject for a different day. You will always have the people behind you that are going 45 miles an hour plus passing you on the left-hand side when I am in the lane. So now you're going to have a left-hand turning lane with the potential of a car possibly waiting to make a left-hand turn, me making a right-hand turn with somebody doing 45 miles an hour behind me. So you have an accident.
I understand that. And I will tell you from the traffic engineer's perspective, I completely agree. And that is a concern of mine with this plan.
It's a big problem. You're gonna have an accident.
I will put it out there that there's no shoulder on that side for people to use as a result of the installation of the left turn lane. And there is where I have one of my biggest concerns, because it is going to be an issue. I have no doubt. I used to actually live in Cheswick many years ago, so I'm very familiar with the movements in this area. And I am concerned about the fact that approaching Meeting House Road, the shoulder is being used for the travel lane. And I think the shifting of, while we're providing a safe space for those left turning vehicles, we are taking away a safe space for the right turning vehicles. And it happens, it's really in both conditions. And, you know, it's something that I don't have a good answer for, you know, with the configuration. As far as addressing the alignment of the intersection with Meeting House, you're right, Scott. PennDOT did require it to be aligned. I had many conversations with them. I gave them my position as to why I thought it should be further down. But that's not ultimately who gets the final say. They get the final say. They need a permit onto a state road, and that is their position. I think that there was benefits for it to be in both locations, but they ultimately chose for it to be opposite Meeting House Road. And it does create a distance issue with Cheswick. And by adding the left turn lane, there's benefits to adding the left turn lane, but without having the existing shoulders that are there today, it creates other challenges.
I think one of the issues is because when people are coming up.
We're not doing this way. We're having a discussion where we are now answering the questions that you asked earlier and also discussing the point amongst ourselves. We need to be taken for now.
It's dangerous. It's
dangerous. I did want to ask, Kristen, about the comment about snow storage. Is there still a plan of buffer and trees beyond the area that shows what to be a snow storage location?
Yeah, you look at the plan, there's area, we need somewhere to put the snow. So there needs to be an area somewhere on the plan. And there's planting. Yeah, there is landscaping all around it. But there is a pocket for the snow in that area, right there. That's about it.
I do.
And it's still quite a bit up.
Yeah, there's lots of trees in there.
They're small.
Large trees.
Well, all the trees that will be planted will be the required caliper inch per the township. We are expecting them to grow. And we need space for that to happen. So of course, they're gonna be smaller than we'd all like at the initial plantings, but we need room for them to
You
grow.
have larger trees also with them.
To the left and right of large trees, so the headlights coming down that thing is shined into Windsor.
Trees grow, they're gonna grow. Okay, does Karen anything? There's specific things you can overlook or. Yeah. Okay, so I think that where we are now, Lisa, let me know what you all think. Is that you need to hear back from PennDOT again. A lot of what the neighbors are bringing up is very valid claims, that's their concerns for how the road and the intersections, crossings are gonna work. We do have to defer PennDOT on a lot of these issues. They are Dutch. It seems like the other issues that we're having that are most concerned to the residents have to do with privacy and runoff. So I think we should ask the owner, the applicant, to take the time to consider a way to solve the next problem. But I know that's come back.
I know, I think you guys just don't like, I don't think they like the answer. I mean, what we have, this is our 5th time here. I'm imploring the planning commission to make a recommendation tonight so that we can move forward. We have a response from PennDOT that they approved that layout. The only difference is whether or not that shoulder will change. We didn't want to put the turning lane in. No, we didn't want to put the road across from Meeting House. We are put in a position to carry the water of existing traffic for 26 homes. And 26 is permitted by code. We're not asking for any variances or any change in zoning, but we have listened to all the neighbors. We have beefed up the landscaping. There's no questions about the stormwater. We can comply. And the only thing that PennDOT is doing is reviewing what they insisted we put in. So it's 6 feet or 8 feet. I really think, Madam Chair, that the planning issues are set. Therefore, we need to move forward. This has been, like I said, this is our 5th time here, and we've adjusted to everything that people have brought up.
I'm having testimony to their. Main thing I'm looking at now that I think is fixable is the fence problem. I can't fix where meeting house road is. You know, nobody can change that. But
I think the fence could be part of your recommendation. If you feel that we need to replace the fence, you could put that in your recommendation. And we'll have that discussion. We have a lot of other items, you know, with the trees. You know, we're gonna have a tree replacement number. We have off-site improvements. That sidewalk out to Cheswick is not cheap, and it may require the relocation of another pole. We have another off-site improvement connecting to the township park that we agreed to do. And now we're doing all these frontage improvements. I mean, there has to be a push point. So if you'd like us to replace that fence, please put it in your recommendation and allow us to move forward to the supervisor.
With all due respect, the cost that the applicant has to incur is not a township issue.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, we know what those houses are gonna go for.
With all due respect, the fence isn't a township issue either. And are having to put these road improvements in when PennDOT said they're not warranted. They're not warranted from today's traffic or even with our traffic. It's that there was pressure put on them to insist on those turn lanes. Where that pressure came from, I can only imagine. But now we're stuck with it and dealing with the effects of having to put those turn lanes in and affecting the other side of the street. I mean, we're in an impossible situation, but we've gone, I think, as far as we can. But if you want to put it in your recommendation, we'll take it up with the supervisors. But from a planning perspective, I don't think anything's going to change between now and your next planning commission.
Well, I'm concerned about the set triangle issue with the trees. Those trees are not on the property. I'm obviously very interested in making sure that there's privacy fence in place to further protect the neighbors from the impacts of the development, which is huge. I mean, you know, it's developed property. And
yeah, we do.
These are all steps. I think it's gonna be done right, but there's no denying the impact's gonna happen. I'm not comfortable, making a recommendation today, but I would like to ask the commission where they are. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm not ready to do.
I think it would be, in everyone's best interest in that case, that we hold off on our recommendation today until we hear back about the PennDOT letter and that we are satisfied that the changes in the intersections and all the things that PennDOT is looking at are good as they can be, and that we find out what's going on with that site triangle. And we would also like you to, we can't force the issue, we can later on put it in a recommendation, but if we could do something about that, let's maybe come with a creative solution to that problem, so that's in to,
Well, the only issue is to put in a new fence along the entire property line. I think that's the only solution that we're looking for.
Yep, yeah.
Build somewhere else.
Where we were, yeah. That's where we were from.
There you go. If you decide not to do that, you put that in our recommendation. Anything else, Mr. Taylor? Stephanie, do you have anything else? All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving on.
Thanks. I know we moved on to the next subject. Can I ask just a follow-up question? That's okay?
At the end.
At the end? Okay. Well, it's actually with this client though, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's fine.
Okay. Well, they're probably leaving.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Understand that. Time. It's with me. So you're changing.
I will.
Evening, everybody, and that is correct. This property unfortunately has been the subject of many fits and starts, I'll say, over the past 15 years probably. And for reasons unrelated to the project itself, it's not moved expeditiously. There is another developer who has the property under agreement, so that's going to provide, I hope, some momentum to just finish it at this point. Not sure how many planning commission members, I know a few of you have seen the project before. I think Manus might have been here for the whole length of it. And I know Michelle and Stephanie have been around for the last several renditions. Also somewhat of a challenging site. The primary challenge has always been the access point. It has had a few iterations before we ended up with the configuration that you see. But probably the most challenging aspect, if you're familiar with that part of Sunnytown Pike, is it's a very steep embankment today, right where our road is proposed. So that steep embankment, rather than continuing along Sunnytown Pike, will continue along our proposed access driveway until it basically runs out of grade. At one point, we had a PennDOT permit for that access. It's since expired, so we do need to reapply and reacquire a PennDOT permit for that access. It's a state road, obviously. I did have a conference with PennDOT and reviewed the issues. I don't believe there will be any issues with acquiring that permit in its present configuration. So we're really dealing more with whatever township issues that are surrounding that access. Primarily, it's been the grade. I think. I'm sorry. We had a PennDOT permit in the past. It has lapsed, so we do need to start that process over. But I did meet with PennDOT in a Zoom meeting just to review the project. I don't think there's going to be an issue with PennDOT obtaining a permit. We kind of re-reviewed all the major issues with regard to it, the site distance that's available, its location relative to other driveways. I don't think PennDOT's going to have any issues. The issues have always been the grade. That portion of the road, Sunnytown Pike or Main Street, is super elevated, which means the grade is sloped away from our property. So PennDOT restricts how much of a grade difference we can have between the roadway and our proposed access. So the initial portion of our road is flat. It's 2% grade, which is barely perceivable. And then we try to go as steeply as we can where the curve is to get down to the straight part. So as steep as we can, in my opinion, still isn't very steep. It's 8% at the greatest slope. And 8% is actually still a permissible slope for an accessible route on a sidewalk. So even despite that, it's not going to appear to be a very steep roadway, but it's not flat in that area. That does result in, as I said, projecting that steep grade rather than along Sunnytown Pike along the outside curve. Another important aspect of that is the access is sloping up to the highway. So the maximum grade generally is to avoid a steep grade down to the highway when you're approaching the highway, snowy or icy conditions. We won't have that. It'll be the opposite. And the first 20 plus feet is basically flat. So it's also not a situation where a car would be sitting on a steep grade waiting to pull out. So I think we've got the best solution for dealing with the issues that we have. And it's important to note too, that it is a privately owned roadway, street, driveway, whatever you want to term it. It's not going to be a township maintained road. It's gonna be completely private. We are proposing at the bottom of the plan, as you're looking at it, to connect to the adjacent driveway, which is a small office building and apartments. I think there's apartments on the second floor, office on the first floor. So it does provide a secondary access point for that project as well. And I will say that, I'm sorry,
That's private.
that's also private. So we'll require an easement agreement between the two property owners. And I believe their access is somewhat compromised in terms of site distance. So I think we're providing a better solution for their site as well. Another important aspect for the property that it provides is I think an important pedestrian link. We are proposing to extend from Pioneer Circle through the township open space, ultimately through our property. You can see the path right above where Mike's arrow is right there. And then it'll connect to our access way. It'll go out to Sundaytown Pike through sidewalk. And then Sundaytown Pike will have sidewalk as well. So we're proposing curbing, widening, and sidewalk on Sundaytown, but not there. It actually will follow what's labeled Chelsea Lane. If you continue where you were, Mike.
Just back over the creek, right?
Well, yes, that's where it connects to Pioneer Circle. And then it goes along our roadway up to Sundaytown Pike. And then continues along our frontage along Sundaytown Pike. And the reason I think that's important is it connects the Pioneer Circle area to Harleysville, including the new pathway that was constructed along 113. Not really feasible for that path to continue beyond this property along Main Street, just because of grade and things like that. So I don't see the sidewalk continuing, so I think it makes that connection even more important in terms of bringing pedestrian traffic to Harleysville. I will the proposed. What length of the road? It starts about the beginning of, it probably about, well, the length of road that's 8% is 9 feet. That's it. It's a 9-foot section that's at 8%. It goes to 2% at Sundaytown Pike and 5% on the other side. So it's really just at one short section that's 8%. The good example I can think of is in Vernfield. There is a development that's similar. It's Covenant Lane. I believe Covenant Lane is a 10% grade coming down there. So it's not as steep as that. And it's only for 9 feet. If you don't have any specific questions, I'm going to quickly go through the review. They are 2-family dwellings. There's twins. Sorry, I should have covered that. There's 6 proposed buildings, 2 units each. So it's 12 new residential dwellings, 6 buildings. And there are 2 existing dwellings, which will remain single-family dwellings. And they're both brick. One of them is sort of a Victorian looking, that one there. Yeah, needs a little work, but it's got great bones. It does. It could be a really, yeah, it could be a really nice.
Rick, are there any major changes from when it came
No.
before?
No, the changes are minor, I would say, just trying to address review comments. The only thing I'm really looking for tonight is some kind of consensus that the configuration is resolved at this point.
Well, what we would stop, or how come this always get going and then like with gangbusters that are just kind of.
It needed another developer to push it along. That's the simple answer. The landowner doesn't even live in Pennsylvania anymore, so it just could not keep momentum.
Recommend approval at some point?
No, it got very close, and then again, momentum stopped, and then our permits lapsed, so we kind of got back at that point. What we need to do for the offsite path is it does go through two owners' properties at Pioneer Circle, but there are existing easements there. We need to meet with them, and resolve it. Might ask for the township to help us with doing that because the easements are really for the township purposes. But I don't want to approach that until we at least know we're kind of headed in the right direction. There is one zoning comment which comes back, which I don't think should be a zoning comment. And there is a tree in front of one of those brick dwellings, it's actually the one that's more on the top. That is right on the right of way. So we cannot install that curbing, widening, and sidewalk without disturbing that tree. The sidewalk literally ends up 6 inches from the tree. Trees on the right of way. So the current version of the village commercial ordinance says not allowed to remove a tree within the front yard unless it's required for removals required for proposed driveways or the tree is unhealthy. In this case, I don't believe that tree is in the front yard because it's on the right of way. The front yard is the area between the street line and the building setback or the building. In this case, we're right on the right of way. So I don't think it's right to have to get a zoning variance to put in required township improvements. But I will say, I think looking at the new village commercial ordinance, that zoning provision has been removed. I know that ordinance isn't in place.
Could you confirm that this is a tree, you know?
That's it.
That's it, help. It looks like a tree. It is big, yeah.
It's still alive. I drove by it tonight, just hoping it died. But it didn't. Got some dead branches, but it's not not a beautiful tree. I just think the determination should be made. I'm sorry?
You replace it then?
Yeah, it would be included in tree replacement calculations, but.
Are they currently street trees along the section?
Not really. They're all kind of weedy junk.
Is that?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
No, there isn't. Once you put the sidewalk in, there's not a lot.
There's not. And what you're seeing is the existing right of way, not the ultimate right of way. The ultimate right of way goes right through the middle of the chunk. Yeah. And I don't think it's a situation where we should move the sidewalk closer to the curb to say it's not that nice of a tree and you would compromise the sidewalk, in my opinion. So.
Don't need to convince me, you.
Yeah. We are, if you look at the landscaping plan, we're proposing all new street trees along Semi-Town Pike, so it would have street trees after the development. What's that?
There's no space for it.
There is, yeah.
Do you know what kind of tree, what the species?
We did identify them. I don't have it at my fingertips, but we did identify them. Our waivers, a number of them are related to the roadway, as I just described. And the waiver list is really derived as if it was a public road. In other words, if we were proposing a publicly owned road dedicated to the township, this would be the waiver list. I'm not just necessarily disagreeing that's what it should be, but I think it has to be looked at in context that it's a private road as well. We have discussed waivers in the past. I would be happy to go through them if you want me to. I don't think it's necessary.
Stephanie, could you tell us what your first impression is of the, I assume you've seen this before?
Yes, I have. So and Rick is well aware of my biggest concern with the horizontal and vertical curvature of the access. Mike, I don't know if you can go to sheet 16, I guess maybe 17 with the cover sheet. there's a plan view and profile view just to allow the members to see what my concern is. You might have to go to the next. I have it as sheet 17 on the PDF package. There you go. Yes. So you can see the access approaching 63 at the top left. And then it goes into the horizontal curve, which is the 66-foot radius curve. So the profile down below on the left side is Sumneytown Pike or Main Street. You can, if you zoom in, that's 2%, which is what Rick was saying, coming off the high side of the super elevation. That allows for the 8% maximum grade change. He carries that 2% for a distance, and then it goes into a curve, which is then into the 8.01% grade. For, I guess if you pan down just a little bit so I can see the spacing below and the stationing, it's roughly 8% for probably what,
I think it's 9 feet. Actually, if you go up, you see the labels for the curves.
I think it's a little more than, certainly more than 9 feet, but maybe it's not. I guess actually 8%, but then the curves themselves have the steeper slope going into the reverse curve, and heading down. If you pan down a little bit, please, Mike. You can see that's essentially 8% over this distance, here where the curve is starting then to bend in the other direction. So the point that has our main concern is that we're using a minimum horizontal radius or below minimum horizontal radius with a maximum steep grade, right? And so generally those two items together should be avoided, right? Because you're using the maximum of each, right, for this condition. And they're going to, vehicles obviously are going to be entering and coming down the hill and around the curve. So that's our biggest concern with the access. I understand it's tight. I understand it's steep. I understand it's similar to the Covenant Lane. Covenant Lane has got a longer straight section, even though it's steep, as it goes down the hill. And then there's a T to make the right. Rick and I have talked about this many times. I don't know what else to say other than I just don't really think that the maximum slope and the minimum radius make a good combination. That's my opinion. I understand it's going to be a private road, but there is still, there's still going to have to be, icy conditions. That's the reason for not wanting to have those two items coupled together.
Slightly, would be able to pick up enough grade to make these slopes more palatable. Like to make the units up, swing the road up road.
I might need you to repeat the beginning of that, Julia. You were breaking up a little bit.
It's a possibility, but if you were to remove the 2 units that are also in the floodplain in the top corner there, and have the road go further towards where they are, and then swing back up, would you gain enough length of road to make the slopes more palatable?
I really don't think so. I think it's a very difficult area. And within the confines of what he has to work, you can see that, the slopes are steep, where the bend is in the road, right? You can see the contours there together.
So I think the place where I would probably disagree with Stephanie is use of the word steep for 8%. 8% is not flat by any means, but I wouldn't necessarily call it steep, and that is at the maximum grade. And then it is considerably less both directions on either side of that. That's kind of always been my contention here. I don't think there's really anything else in Michelle's letter to discuss. I would consider it either will comply or think we'll be able to resolve it with Michelle. I don't think there's anything really even significant about it. Unless you disagree, Michelle?
About 80% isn't. Keep it lost, my thought. Right.
And it is ADA accessible.
The one thing I'd really like you to change is the outlet height,
I know.
so you'll do that then. You said we'll apply.
We'll satisfy it. I have a different idea for you that
Okay.
maybe will satisfy, I think, what your concern is, so.
With the way the water's gonna run off this driveway down into that area. This house is being flooded out.
The road's curved
Yeah.
the whole way and has storm sewer in it, so no, I don't believe they'll be flooding out.
The last storms we've had, the last couple weeks. You get 4 hours.
Most of the areas that flood during those storms are areas that don't have modern stormwater design. There are basements, they're walkout basements, so they'll all have kind of a grade to. Should not have a drainage problem in the basements because they're walkouts. The buildings, I don't. We had previously provided architectural drawings, but they're no longer, that's not the builder, Bob, so they're working. I don't have them tonight.
You have to squeeze that many in there, eliminate one or, no, just cram it all in one spot. It just doesn't seem feasible.
I don't see if we did that anything would change with regard to the design. So no.
How big are they? Like square footage of them and then.
They're approximately 20 by 50, I believe, are the units with basement.
And then basement and like, main floor and upstairs.
They're not necessarily small.
You're gonna, I assume, rehab the existing buildings to a certain extent?
They will probably be sold separately,
Okay.
not as part of the development. They are both occupied by fairly long-term tenants. I don't know whether they'll ultimately be the purchaser.
The property line remains the same, the property line, or are you redoing that?
No, the property lines are gonna be redone completely.
But they will be part of that association then? They'll be
No.
independent? Okay.
Not intended to be that way.
Because you're providing rear access to that, right?
We are,
Onto your private road.
yeah.
Which they own.
I shouldn't state that so confidently. Those homeowners documents still need to be created, so not sure how that will work out in the end. So I guess it's feasible that they may be included in the association. In Stephanie's letter, no, if there's anything else to really talk about. There's several comments about the path. I kind of let them ride for now. We intend to comply with them all. But I didn't want to do it until we knew that we kind of had a configuration that was going to work for everybody. We had years ago had met with township park staff out there who I don't think anybody's involved anymore. Mary West and her husband and some other people, and kind of walked that whole route. And we'd even talked to the owners that were there at the time. But we have not done anything since, and I don't know whether it's even the same owners at this point on Pioneer Circle. We'll have to do some digging there. And see if one of them is. Okay. They have put some fences and things like that across that easement, so it's going to take a little bit of work to get the path there, I think. So.
The properties are lower section where you have the shared easement, space. And will that go back out to the main road? Here.
Which ones?
The contractor's office.
The existing neighboring property?
When you say-
Yeah, when you're going to.
So they have a driveway now. That's actually John Garris Homes' office. And I think there's either one or two apartments on the second floor, so they have an existing driveway on the other side of their building. But that's the only access for that and the property next door to them. And that driveway is somewhat compromised, in my opinion, with sight distance. So this actually gives them a secondary access, which I believe is good for them. So.
It's a relatively new building again, still.
Yes, it's a situation where we can get rid of the garages, but you can kind of have DOT people.
I actually think their entrance is worse, in my opinion. It's really, sight distance, there's a high point in the road which limits sight distance. So I actually think that's a worse condition than what we're proposing. I think there's going to be an improvement over what's there today. And we had done some alternatives where we tried a road location in the middle of our tract as well. And that really was, again, I think this is the best configuration that we have got at this point. The county had some comments, and you probably have not seen this one before, I'm not sure.
I have a memory of reviewing it, but I can't remember if it was an unofficial review, if I thought at a commission meeting, I recognized it immediately. But no, I remember I looked at it back in the files and I saw we had some old reviews from 2015 and something like that.
So I think the main comments are this tree, variety in the tree, and we can look at that, providing some additional variety. I think maybe I had a comment about an invasive species for one of these rows, possibly. But varieties we can accommodate. And also, because of the steep slopes and the plantings we're proposing on the steep slopes, we are proposing tree wells. Michelle's review is asking for some greater detail, maybe different use of materials. Claire's review is asking to look at that situation, which we will, and that doesn't really affect, the access or anything like that. It's just how we would accommodate plantings on the steeper slopes. It's what? Yes. Yes, none of that. There's really the only township, I would say, public facilities, the portion of the path that's on the township land ultimately, and the sidewalk, but the sidewalk's really the association too, because it's the homeowner that maintains sidewalks. So. I think that's it.
Back to letting know, I think that was the main thing. We had some concern with the steep slopes around what he was describing on the upper side of the driveway entrance. And then it appears very steep, and that's where the tree wells would be going. So we had some concerns about the maintenance of that area. If it's cracked, it would be more difficult to mow. The tree wells seem, yeah, we would like more detail on that. We suggested that maybe some kind of tiered system might be more appropriate, because then there might be more space in the trees and also be a little bit easier to maintain than that slope around the basement area. And then we also suggested, unrelated to landscaping, the possibility of adding a landing curb for pedestrians on the other side of their driveway. I understand that it might be challenging and not possible right now for there to be a sidewalk at the time, but we'd like the idea of a continuation of the pedestrian network up Main Street if possible, and so on that end to be able to add a spot for pedestrians to in the future.
I don't see the sidewalk being extended on that side of the road ever. And I actually think the grade as you continue past the property, that is our property line there. And you can see some of the grading goes beyond. We have an easement from that property owner, the Henry property, to do the grading. But there's a guide rail there proposed along the entrance. There is one today as well, but instead of coming along Sunnytown Pike, it'll just come along our driveway. So I don't think that that's a possibility in the future, that sidewalk would be extended. It would be a significant undertaking to continue.
Yeah. I can add for that, just that, yes, there is a vision that that section of road would have a future sidewalk connection up to 113 as part of the Trail and Sidewalk Committee. It's a vision. It would mean there's going to be a lot of challenges that would be able to allow that to happen, whether it's on this side of the road or the other side of the road. But that doesn't eliminate us and the Trail and Sidewalk Committee from showing it as a future connection in some fashion. But I would agree, Rick, that it's a challenging area. There's a lot of driveways. There's, the parking, like as you get closer to the 113 intersection, you have the slopes. There's a lot of things that would need to be considered. It would be a much larger project to be able to make that connection. But it is planned. There is a future consideration for sidewalk connection along that segment. But that's about as far as it has gotten. It's on a planning map at this point.
So first tonight, you're looking for us to be general. I do like your
Yes.
zone.
And then we would pursue our PennDOT permit. And the trail connection. And I would maybe look for support, some support meeting with the owners, with the township possible.
Oh, sure. Yep, I'm support. No, just not taking any actions. Cool.
Okay,
Go for it.
thank you.
Start, just go.
Is there going to be a planning commission meeting in July or is it likely it's going to be?
I'm sorry, doesn't it? We're in public input on this development. Anyone have anything you want to say about this development?
Just wondering, is there a creek that's going through there?
Not through our property.
Not through
There's a
yours?
creek behind us. That's between the Pioneer Circle homes and our property, but it's a fair amount lower than our property.
Okay.
The trail that I'm talking about goes through the township property, makes a right-hand turn, and actually does cross the creek. There's already a culvert there because it used to be a driveway to the farm.
Okay.
It's back there. There's water in that creek all the time?
Not all the time, but when it rains, there's got that water.
It's the one week.
It goes under Harleysville National Bank.
Goes underneath the.
And then it goes right under Main Street and up the hill, so a lot of it is piped. This is where it's open.
I was out there, bus stars out there, goes down across the street, across the vehicle, it's all underground.
It's all underground, yeah. I think it goes behind the, the fast tag and the smoothie place, and then it comes out behind the building.
That's where we pick up the dust stuff, that we wash.
I believe that.
Yeah, the whole. Oh, right. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I missed the part. That was the part you asked about.
That's a good point. I forgot to mention. Should we, maybe the next step would be to go in front of the board to just informally discuss the waivers as well.
So.
Supervisor.
Okay, so you didn't bring that up just now.
I did not.
Oh, what did you
So-
get back for the
Well, I'm
next step?
thinking that may be a good idea between now and the next time we come to visit the board of supervisors to just informally discuss our waivers.
So like I was saying. That's out of sequence and it puts the board in an uncomfortable position. They depend heavily on the planning commission on their votes with the, before they go final.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time here. It used to be the complete opposite. Where they always wanted us to go to the board first before the planning commission. Well, it's fine. All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you're opening the up against the public comment. I'm assuming it's all going to be on the previous development. Please do not repeat things that have already been said. You're doing public comment.
You said it was comment. Mike and I had talked about this earlier in the week too. That I meant to bring up when they were here. They're proposing to put streetlights in that development. Which none of the surrounding ones have it, except the one behind the post office. Cheswick doesn't have streetlights. The new ones on Maple don't have streetlights. The one by Walnut Park don't have streetlights, but they want to put streetlights in there, which are then gonna shine into Cheswick. And you're gonna see them from Harleysville Pike. Now, the reason Mike and I discussed, he explained it to me because it was a multi-unit development. It's a safety issue because there's on-street parking. If I'm speaking out of turn, Mike, let me know. But it just seems a little bit overboard that they'd have to put streetlights. And it's, I think it was stated in one of the things that it was for a safety issue. So you're taking a situation where you have Durstein's Farm there that's not unsafe now, and now you're turning it into an unsafe area, so you gotta put streetlights in to make it a safe area. Just seems kind of contradictory. That's one of the things I'd like to bring up, is there's streetlights going in there that I don't know why they're doing.
It's 13 parking spaces.
There's 13 parking spaces, but there's a number, if you look at the drawings and you zoom in, you can see it's dotted with streetlights all the way out the streets.
Yeah, I don't think it's dotted with, I don't have the plans in front of me, most likely they're at the intersection.
No.
If you look down the street, there are a decent number of lights in certain areas, they're pretty dim. If you light up the areas, they're necessary, they've been, I live, there's 89 townhomes in there. And there's a decent amount of lights, but they don't light up much. But they light up certain areas that get dark. And they're very useful and necessary. I have to look at and see if that's a similar thing. But lights are, I think they're necessary, something like that, it just depends how bright where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I drove around the developments and the new ones and the existing ones, and I wasn't finding any except for the post office. It was the only development I could name that's in that area that has streetlights. None of the new ones they just put in recently have. So I just thought it odd this one's getting it. Thank you.
So not repeating an issue, but maybe seeking clarification, what I heard the woman say about the blasting specifically, and Lori, thank you for putting a couple of things out there. And again, I live on Oakland Avenue. And I know right now today, every Friday around 11 o'clock, you know, the quarry goes off and my house shakes. Right, and I can't prove it, but the cracks I have in my foundation are probably due to. My concern is if 6 inches down is bedrock and they're putting basements in, how are they gonna be removing that rock and stuff? And if there is blasting that takes place, what potential impact could it have on my house? Or to, like I said, the well water supply that is in that entire area? I know many of my neighbors have lost their wells because of various things that are going on, you know, geographically and with the environment, but it's a concern, right? I do appreciate you all looking at and listening to all of us relative to, you know, the traffic, the intersections, the boundary line, with respect to the fencing and the trees, et cetera. I thank you all for that and not being hasty to a decision. But I want to just put that on record as well, that I heard her say that there will not be any blasting.
Yeah, Representative said that she didn't think there.
She would think it would be blasting.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you don't want to blast.
No, and they always put that as a provision, because they never know when they're gonna need.
When they're gonna need to, right?
And I believe it, Michelle, you can even help me here, I think. It's a heavily regulated thing from other developments, it's heavily regulated.
What blasting?
Yeah.
If there's certain permits that.
Yeah, there's people with permits, they'll monitor a certain radius.
Yeah. I understand that. I don't want them either. I also understand, maybe talking with some of my other neighbors, is that like the radius from a blasting perspective may or may not cover me.
Right.
Right? So I could be
10
like
feet outside the radius.
Exactly, and I could be host.
Was it required to take out liability insurance for that?
Well, let me tell you how blasting works in the township. The township can't stop a developer from blasting. Blasting is an appropriate legal form of excavation.
Sure.
So they'll get the permit from the state. Not from us. However, we have additional regulations regarding blasting, and they also need a full permit from us. And those regulations require them to survey the existing conditions for all residents in the area that is designated. The distance from the property, I can't recall at the moment, but if that resident wants the survey, they have to elect for the survey, and then they'll receive that survey, and at the end, they'll receive a follow-up survey. So there's protocol for it.
And I appreciate that.
There's nothing that the township can do to stop. that.
Yep, understood. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna videotape my whole basement and document where my cracks are and are not, and hopefully never have to talk about it again, so.
Right into that, Mike, didn't they do blasting for either the oak or the maple construction of the
Yeah, I think it
houses?
was,
Cause we heard it a lot.
was it I-20 South there? Yeah, so
So it's
I
good
think
that,
blasting has happened over the past 5 years, maybe on 3 different developments. No, they did it over there on Press Road for the PVC machines that did blasting. So it's not uncommon in Township because of course the highway problem.
They Randy used to, we had a big tractor with the big.
Yeah, they can rip through it with the machinery, and they start grabbing it.
That's what they're using behind the coast.
Yeah,
you hear that. They just started warning they go off and they. Yeah.
Okay, any other new comments, sir?
Yeah, hi, Bob Kowalski, new to all this with the meetings, I haven't been to any of them before. When it comes to PennDOT asking them to move the road. I understand that was a request from PennDOT to state road, understood, but you still had. In your ordinance, that needs to be 800 feet apart for the 2 roads, correct? And that's why they're asking for a waiver for it.
Yes.
So if you deem it not safe, you could technically, even with PennDOT asking to be moved, say it's not safe to be. Moved there, and therefore you can't accept that waiver, and that's up to them to figure it out from there, correct?
It's a little more complicated now because PennDOT, it is a state road, and PennDOT is the ones who make the final decision.
Well,
I-
PennDOT makes the final decision for the HOP permit, but you can still say you won't accept their waiver. I'm an engineer who did land development for a while, that's the reason I asked.
Yeah, that puts the township in a very difficult position, and so the township would have been it's a state road. If PennDOT gives them the HOP, then the township won't stand in their way of that HOP. As a formality, the waiver would need to be granted.
Cause if you're looking at this, they're talking about 238 feet, and it's supposed to be 800, it's not even close, you're talking, it's almost a quarter. That's, I mean, that's significant.
You also have to look at the practicality, sometimes waivers are basically required because there's no way to actually locate the driveway that is 800 on frontage of the site.
Well, this might mean the site's not gonna be used for that purpose.
Yeah, so you can't deny the entire project.
Okay, my other question is regarding the tree and the site distance. The trees in, I think it's Ron's backyard, which is his property. They can't do anything about that, correct?
It's a side property line, and it's within the right of way, I think what the trees are talking about.
It is not in the right of way, it's only in private property, it's completely different, right? It is in the right of way, the township for.
Yeah, I don't think, without Ron's approval of them removing a tree or living it up, I don't. It's uncommon for that to happen. But again, that wouldn't.
Is there anything?
That's just a detail that.
Is there anything preventing Ron from planting a bunch of trees and bushes in that area on his property?
He can buffer.
Yeah,
As long as it's within his property,
Within his
not
property.
within the right of way.
yep, understood, but like right now, you go plant some things right now. In that area, as long as it's in his property.
Right, and his fence is within the right of way, so his property goes much further, not much, well, into his property. More into his property than I believe that he realizes.
but I think to piggyback on that though, is the property, what Ron was talking about is. replacing the fence between his backyard
Mhm.
and the farm. And I believe that would block the line of sight as well. And then it'll.
I don't believe so, but we'll have to check that.
But you
Okay,
do-
you're right, Jack. Please.
Yeah, it's 394 Windsor Drive.
You have an agenda item.
Sorry, I got distracted.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I do have to.
And if everyone wants to table it, I'll help.
We put this.
I'll be brief. No, you give me 2 minutes.
There you go.
So the township has always had one track for development. It's always been a land development. And that means if a non-residential property wanted to put up a shed, they would have to go through the full gauntlet. Okay, so we've been working on an alternate procedures for the smaller projects. Looked at local municipalities adjacent to us, and they too offer these alternate procedures. They call them minor land developments. Okay, that would be the next tier down from a regular land development. It would be a minor land development, and they establish thresholds for that. Most of them have a 25% of the building coverage as the threshold, plus a square footage, whichever's less. Or greater, I don't know. But it's 25% or less, 25% or 5,000 square feet of.
That's something pretty bad. Addition on their garage.
Right. Right, well, it's generally focused around non-residential, but.
From the church questions, what the church would really want me to clarify.
So the difference between a regular land development and a minor land development might be that a county review would not be required. That preliminary final would be the pathway to take, so they wouldn't have to request a waiver for it. And there would be less fee, application fee and escrow. Okay, so we're working on establishing that threshold. Okay, and we also, the even smaller projects that would only require administrative approval. So then we would, instead of having one land development process for everything, we would have 3 processes. A full land development, a minor land development, and then exceptions. That would just be exempted from land development.
What's the
Yes, thank you.
example?
Sorry.
What's the example?
Okay, so an example of that is in Limerick, they exempt all development that is 20% or less building coverage. Or 3,000 square foot of earth disturbance. Okay, exempted from all land development, it's just administrative.
You're saying,
Right,
they extend the driveway or if they want a little deck on the back of the house.
right.
So they're, what we're doing is making the process easier, they don't have to meet all the requirements.
Yes,
All your
so-
control and I.
Exactly, so even administrative, did you just timing? So that would be even.
Good thing you don't use that on
The administrative process would require that they submit grading permits and building permits, so stormwater management, zoning, everything they would still need to comply. It's just not the procedure, not planning commission or supervisors agreements.
So, everyone wants that in here.
Yeah, so I will
Bring us through.
bring with her.
You have to read less than 2 minutes.
No.
I'm gonna extend the 2 minutes by a second. The one thing I would like you all to think about is whether even for these exceptions or waiver of land developments, if you still want street trees, if you still want trails and sidewalks. Or road improvements, widening, you still might want to include that as requirements.
Yes, that.
Okay. Those are things to.
Those are the usual.
Talk about those.
Does the county have other, municipalities that are doing this, exams for us?
Oh, yeah, we do have other counties that have different procedures for different types of land development. I can't think of them all off the top of my head right now, but I'm happy to provide them.
Are they working well?
Pardon?
Are they working well for those municipalities?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, I can consult with our other planners to see if they have any plan on what process would be better.
Okay. Anything else?
Julie, can she just ask one more thing if you don't mind?
You know what, I will bring it up next time. I do want to thank the committee. And thank you guys. The county has done a great job. Mike has been great with process and specific things. Thank you very much. I have another compliment, if you don't mind, 2 minutes. It's an example where everything went right. There was a new tree planted behind my house, Westwood Circle. And the PPL tagged it to be removed. Well, the tree contractor knocked on my door and said, hey, there's a nice tree back there. We don't think it's in the way. You can say no. And I said, oh, I'm calling the township. I got Patty on the line. Patty said, give me 10 minutes. That's crazy. And in 8.5 minutes, Patty called me back and said, I got Brent. Brent's coming over right now. And Brent drives up with his truck. Brent says, stop, you can't do it. So the contractor did the right thing. I called the township. Patty got the buildings. But I mean, you know, I'm not quiet about bringing up the students, but I want to say Patty is tremendous.
What was my concern, what was going to happen if we didn't save the tree?
Well, Betty was gonna lock herself up.
Herself to the tree, so I was very scared. But-
There's a tree in back of my yard I want to save, so, yeah.
Yes, let's go.
Who's gonna save her?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.